Welcome back to Les Schwab Tire Center's Outdoor GPS, presented by Fisherman's Marine and Outdoor.
Welcome back, everyone. Mr. Shane Magnuson from Yakima Bait, also owner-operator of Upper Columbia Guide Service. We rarely get the chance to get him in here, not nearly enough, but it's great to see you on a Saturday, man.
Good morning, sir.
How you been?
Been good.
I know that with Yakima Bait in particular, this is a pretty busy time of year for you, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, running around to sports shows and playing with lures and getting everything put together for the new year. It's busy in the wintertime.
Well, this has got to be the biggest release, I guess, maybe for 2026. Are there other products that are coming up from Yakima Bait, or is it the new sizes of the cut plug that's really kind of the hot ticket for you guys right now?
You know, we finished these up kind of late last year, and it's really what we're pushing into for 26.
Okay.
I mean, we're always working on other stuff, but that's what we got for this year, and you know, for salmon, kokanee, trout, whatever. So.
Yeah. Now, I asked you this question prior to the show. With the new sizes that are out, let's just go ahead and take a look at that Maxima Tech Cam. You've got size 2, okay, and a 3.5 that are coming out. We've already had the 2.5 and the 3.0s. So now the new sizes are just kind of bookending that. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I mean, there's a need obviously for smaller sizes when you get into that kokanee trout world. Obviously, our salmon are biting them too.
Sure.
Everything's been downsizing. But you get out to some of the fisheries, especially up towards Alaska and things, that bigger size cut plug where they're mooching and doing different things really is, you know, popular. So we're just, you know, building on what we started.
Well, I think that's a natural progression. I think you hit the nail on the head. When you're talking about the new 2.0, that is absolutely the kokanee size. And you can see there by that photo that Shane sent in over to Ryan, that's the 2.0 right there, isn't it?
That is the 2.0. Actually, that's this one right here.
You can see that Chinook like that. Doesn't matter if it's springers, summers, or falls, or all of them like it?
They all like it.
Okay.
Yeah, that is...
I knew the answer to that, everybody, but I had to ask it. First things first. Obviously, the 2.0 might initially be thought of as just a kokanee bait. We've proven through a number of different baits that are out there these days that those smaller profiles of these baits, for whatever reason, behind a 360, a full-size Chinook, absolutely love them. So the first question that anybody ever asks is the proper rigging, right? Should we change anything from, say right here, this is the 2.5, I believe, size, correct? That's a 2.5.
Yep, that's 2.5.
And that is the rigging that we've been talking about pretty much since they first came out a couple of years ago now. But would you rig it the same in that 2.0? Are you downsizing, you know, smaller diameter leader? Any changes that you would make to be successful on Chinook behind that 360?
You know, it's going to be the same as the 2.5 as far as making sure you get your spacing right. You want that tail to clear that top hook so everything spins nice and properly.
Sure.
But basically, because it's a smaller bait, you're just going some less beads. Looking at this 2.5, you have the 3 5mm beads and a stack of 3 millimeters. You're just going to go a little bit less so that you shorten up that space for the smaller bait.
Okay. Hook size going to be roughly the same, or would you change that?
You know, you can run some bigger hooks, but I've been running 1/0s on them.
Okay.
And you got to be a little tender with those 1/0s. They can, you know, get a little soft if you really put some pressure on fish. But also, those smaller hooks really sink in. They're so sharp.
Sure.
And so
Okay.
I've been liking the smaller hook a lot.
Okay, that makes me nervous, but I'm old school, right? I grew up with 6/0 and 5/0, and we've been progressively over the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years now. Just, it seems like everything's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And a 1/0, man, you're getting down there.
Yeah, you're really getting small. You know, I really go into the small hooks. I'm finding hookup ratios are getting better because of how they penetrate.
Okay, I like that. Okay.
You know, they're so sharp, so needle sharp, they penetrate real well. But you do have to be aware when you start cinching down that drag.
Sure. So you're not giving the rod to your client and just cranking the drag down on it. You're going to have to put a little bit of skill into it, maybe.
I actually had a guy yell at me last year, hey, you need to put a little more pressure on that fish. I can't.
Right. Somebody else in another boat?
Yeah.
He's telling you, with that big old boat, Shane Magnuson, Upper Columbia Guidance Service, hey, I'm going to tell the guide how to guide.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, the fish got out pretty far away from us, and, but.
And, well, you do fish in some of those areas that can get a little cozy. A little bit tight with folks. Okay, I get it, I understand. Now, let's talk, this is kind of, I mentioned this a little bit earlier. I'm looking at this as one, just being a huge bait. In comparison to, obviously, the 2.0 and even the 2.5 here, which is really the size that I spent most of my time with so far. I have fished the 3.0s a little bit, but I just kind of gravitated to that size. But looking at that 3.5, you mentioned might be more popular, up north or maybe out of Seattle or in Alaska, whatever, mooching. But I'm kind of looking at that as something where it might be a bit of a bait saver because we do a lot of bouncing on the Willamette for spring Chinook. In different areas, different zones, some shallow, some very, very rocky. And we're usually doing that with herring or prawns or something like that. But this to me looks like something that might be able to get away with not having to burn through a bunch of herring.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's going to be closer. It's going to be, bigger than your green label, closer to like a blue label size herring.
Okay.
And the biggest trick to it is it's so fishable, whether you're doing divers or bouncing lead or mooching out in the ocean. But if you're in a river situation, playing with your flotation on it.
Oh.
If you got a little more current, that's going to pull that thing and keep it lifted, then you're good. But if you start getting in slower current situations, you may want to throw some corkies up above it or something to keep it, floated in that strike zone just a little.
Okay, makes sense. And if I'm going to go ahead and, can I open this? This is mine, right? I'm taking.
Absolutely.
I was going to say, what do you think your odds are of getting out of here with this in the first place? At least these chrome ones. I'm a big fan of straight chrome. Of course, they're going to have all the different color patterns that are available. But I love chrome, and I always have. Now, that is a big cavity. So in my mind, if I threw a couple of puffballs in there and then some meat on top of it, would you think that might be a way to still load this up, or would you be concerned about any extra flotation inside of here?
Absolutely, and I would probably load the bait first and puffballs on top. Keep that nose up instead of
okay. That's why I ask. All right.
Yep, but absolutely, there's a lot of room in that bait. You can put a lot more bait in it than our smaller sizes.
Sure. And and I'll be honest here, everyone. There's a pretty large contingent of folks out there with the 2.5s and the 3.0s, obviously before the 2.0 and the 3.5s were available, that don't use bait at all. That they're just putting Procure oil in there, or excuse me, not oil, but the gel, and running them empty. It turns out that there's quite a few folks that are doing that, and there's even folks out there that like to manipulate these things. Why can't we just be happy with what comes out of the package? But that's what fishermen do, is tinker with things. So there are some things that you can do to change things up with those, and maybe that's the best way to segue into this upcoming segment. I want to do our tech tips. Since we've got Shane here, I want to talk specifically about the rigging. We kind of talked about that a little bit, but a couple of photos to show you as well that might, maybe take a little bit of the concern of those little 1/0 hooks out, because there's a couple of photos with those things in the mouth. Some fish, they ain't coming off. They're full-blown stitched. We'll be back with that in just a minute.
Outdoor GPS is brought to you by Yakima Bait, steeped in tradition, innovation, and fishing success. And by Procure Bait Sense, ruthlessly effective.